just do all my own assignments with ChatGPT. That'll give me a low risk arena to learn these skills in. And it just happened organically because we'd get to the point in the lesson, hey students, you're gonna write your essay or your constructed paragraph response at the end of these readings. And finally one kid's like, Mr. McKelkey, what are you doing? Like, why are you writing your own essay? And what is this app you're in?
Have you ever had students teach you about the future of learning? Or better yet, has teenagers ever introduced you to a life-changing technology tool? Well, in today's episode, we're talking about what happens when teachers let go of control and create the conditions for students to lead, explore, and innovate, all while leveraging the power of AI. Here's what's coming today in this episode. How Aaron, a high school social studies teacher, uses TikTok and AI to turn classroom experimentation into a global conversation on teacher empowerment. Why creating highly structured, loosely organized learning environments is a secret to real AI integration, and how a simple framework called RAFT is helping students become prompt engineers in their own right, not just users, but creators. Plus, we dig into the real talk about why students don't actually know how to use AI the way we assume they do, and how Aaron is scaffolding this learning in meaningful, equitable ways. Oh, and yeah, we'll even get into wearable AI because Aaron's students are literally bringing AI into the classroom through their classes. Our guest today is Aaron, a high school social studies teacher from Casper, Wyoming, with over 15 years in the classroom. He's gone from head football coach to AI literacy champion, and his TikToks about education and technology are making waves across all the platforms. When he's not teaching, he's sharing his authentic classroom experiences on LinkedIn, Instagram, and of course, TikTok, where his audience includes not only students and teachers, but curious grandparents as well. Now, before we dive in, just a quick reminder, if you're looking to structure your own classroom for AI integration, be sure to grab one of our free integration frameworks over at shiftingschools.com. You just have to go to shiftingschools.com, click on the free resource tab at the top, and there's plenty of them there for you to get started. It's a great companion to today's conversation and perfect for getting your team aligned around responsible, purposeful use of AI in learning. Now, before we get to today's conversation with Aaron, here's a quick word from today's show sponsor. Shifting Schools is excited to be sponsored by newlight.io. Their platform is designed to simplify MTSS frameworks for personalized student support. Built by leading experts, New Light focuses on getting educators the answers they need fast. Which students need which levels of support? With simple data collection and insightful analytics powered by AI, New Light's platform provides actionable solutions to support your students effectively. Try it for free at newlight.io. That's NEULIGHT.io. Check the link in the show notes to learn more. And with that, here is my conversation with Aaron about AI, social media, and teenagers today. All right, welcome back to Shifting Schools. I have been waiting to have this conversation now for over a month. I originally met Aaron here, my guest today. We got stuck doing a webinar, I think, together for the state of Washington. And it was, I don't know for you, but for me, it was like a bromance. I was just like, oh my gosh, I need to talk to this guy some more. The incredible stuff that you're doing with your kids, the way that you think. I just love, sitting down and talking with people and then being able to press record. There's so many different ways to get professional development today. And I say this all the time on the podcast. This is my professional development, finding bright, intelligent people that are doing incredible stuff and then just going and having conversations with them and being able to press record so everybody else can hear that conversation as well. So I'm excited for this one. Aaron, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you had to literally run home from school to be on the podcast today. But as we get started, maybe just fill in everybody else about how you've blown up on TikTok and everything you're sharing over on LinkedIn and just a little bit about your background.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeff. I am a by day high school social studies teacher in Casper, Wyoming. I've been a career teacher and football coach. This is my 15th year in the classroom, I believe. I got a master's in educational leadership, and every year since I finished that, I've thought less about wanting to be a principal. And somehow I blame my wife. I don't know if it's credit or blame. I attribute my social media stuff to my wife. She told me in January of 2024 that I needed to get TikTok, and I was like, I don't want to watch that. She said, no, you have to post stuff. I was
She's
like,
like, no, I don't want you to watch it. I want you to post videos on it.
yes. And this was the talk. I don't usually share this part of the story, but I was doing some things around artificial intelligence in my classroom. And I came home and I was telling her about it. And she goes, you should make videos about that. And I said, well, I'm sure everyone else is doing it. It's free. You could look it up on YouTube. And
Yeah.
she physically grabbed me and she said, Aaron, no one else is doing this. You're weird. That's why you should share it. They'd think it was cool. And I kind of had this light bulb moment. I was like, you mean other people aren't writing their own essays they assign with ChatGPT to learn it in a low risk environment? And she's like, no one's doing that. Go make a TikTok. And it's just kind of snowballed from there. I needed something to do. And I said, I'll put as much time into this as I used to do into being a head football coach, which was a lot of time.
Yeah.
And in some ways, this is more fun. And I try to document and share what I do and be authentic and just say, here's what my student did. Here's the way I teach a lesson. Here's some slang my students use that I explain to all the old people who don't speak Gen Z. And that's what my social media has been. And artificial intelligence has been one of those common threads that I just love to learn about and talk with people like you and learn from your website and podcast, Shifting Schools, which is a great resource.
Talk to us a little bit as we get started here. I always like when I get an opportunity to talk to teachers, talk a little bit about your school, your community, your kids. Are we talking a bunch of all white classroom, high privileged students? Are we talking 60% free and reduced lunch? Give us an idea of what are we talking about from a student body in your school specifically?
Yeah, that's a great question. I come from a very rural background in Wyoming, South Dakota. I grew up in Montana. Now I teach in central Wyoming in the biggest high school in the state, but biggest high school in the state in Wyoming is like being, the tallest short person. It's not that impressive. We're a unique mix of low socioeconomic status and upper end. I believe we were in the low to mid 30s for free and reduced lunch last I looked. So we're not a Title I school by any means, but just anecdotal evidence. Today I was covering an ESL, English as a Second Language class, and I'm with a group of students that have all immigrated from or born early on in America and are not native English speakers from Honduras, Ecuador, Mexico, El Salvador. And so we have a mix of those and sort of the country club side of town because we're an open enrollment district, which is also unique. So it's not just based on segregating neighborhoods.
Oh, interesting. Let's talk a little bit about your class. I want to talk more about your social media, but we'll leave that because I think that'll just come up here naturally as well. But let's talk about your class, your first kind of using AI with students. I think one of the things following you is a lot of teachers there's a lot of teachers that are using AI. I don't know if there's a lot of teachers who are starting to really dig in with kids. Can you kind of maybe talk about how you get started? Like, did you stand up and say, hey kids, today we're going to use AI and I'm going to teach you how to do it? Or was it more of they taught you? How did you get this started, this leveraging with your students?
Yeah, well, the first question is, how did I know about it? And this will shock everyone, but a teenager in the fall of 2022 showed me a TikTok of this thing. And they said, hey, Mr. McKelkey, you're really into technology. Have you heard of ChatGPT? And they held their phone up. And I said, no, I'll have to go home and look that up. It was November, December of 22. Yeah. And I remember going home, it was full. It kept kicking me off and it was overloaded the servers. And the little bit I saw, I thought, how is this doing that? How does this work? How is this possible? And it was from a student's TikTok. So I spent Christmas break kind of doing my own independent research. And I came back in January and I thought, I'll just do all my own assignments with ChatGPT, and that'll give me a low risk arena to learn these skills in. And it just happened organically because we'd get to the point in the lesson, hey, students, you're going to write your essay or your constructed paragraph response at the end of these readings. I'm on the smartboard projecting ChatGPT writing it with me. And most kids still didn't even know what that was. And finally, one kid's like, Mr. McKelkey, what are you doing? Like, why are you writing your own essay? And what is this app you're in? And I said, oh, don't worry, just write your own essay in Google Docs and ignore me. And it was kind of like teasing them enough where they're
Yeah.
like, you
Yeah.
have to show us what you're doing, which I did kind of play into that more than I should have. But it's old adage, you can't make a horse drink.
Yeah.
You can run him in the desert and tease him with water until he's really thirsty, and then he will drink. And that's kind of what I did with AI, where there's like, show us how you did that so well, so fast. And we're over here in the caveman world typing it.
Yeah. I love that. So from there, what happens? You start leveraging it with kids. Did you have to teach kids? Because I think this is one of the things when I'm talking with a lot of teachers, we assume a lot when it comes. I find this is a me thing. I find that we assume a lot of technological skill with students that they don't really have. They know how to watch TikToks. I don't know how many of them know how to create a good TikTok. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
I think the same thing, we're doing the same thing with AI. We are assuming that every single one of our kids knows how to really leverage AI. And I have the feeling that when I get to talk with kids, they don't know how to prompt the thing. They're just like every teacher I'm in front of. They're clueless. They know it's there. They know it can make dad jokes because that's usually what they're having to do, or they're making some silly image with it. But how much time did you have to, what did your experience with that with your students when you got started? Was there some learning that you had to teach them around prompt engineering and what's going on with this thing?
Yes. And I learned that the hard way, because just the same as you teach content, if you don't have a framework and a curriculum and a sequence, you go through that, you're not an effective teacher. And when I first started showing kids, I barely knew what I was doing and didn't have frameworks around how to prompt. I
Mm,
didn't understand iteration strategies. And it was kind of like kids would stare at me like, oh, I don't follow what you're doing. And I didn't have the language to explain it. So in the summer of 2023, I went home and I thought I have to do something different. I have to construct almost like AI literacy lessons on my own and have
mm,
ways to break it down into chunks and give it to kids just like any other skills.
sure.
And coming back 2 years ago, so that'd be fall of 2023, I started doing that. Like a prompting framework, I use RAFT. Ironically, my English teacher in middle school taught me to write essays by considering the role that I was playing, my
Yeah.
audience who's going to read it, the format it was going to come out in, and then the topic I would write on. And I had this light bulb moment. I thought, we don't have to make up new things for AI. We just have to figure out what already works that people know and give them that.
I
And so
love
then I
that.
would come in and say, okay, we're not going to craft a prompt. We're going to raft a prompt. And I would write RAFT on the board. And kids are like, oh, yeah, that makes a way better output when I
Mm,
specified each of these 4 areas. And then maybe the next day we would do something on top of that. And I've codified that now. And what happened, this connection to social media, is people would reach out to me like, how'd you do that? How are you
mm.
teaching that? Can you share that? And that's where my wife was right. People were hungry because they didn't know how that worked or had a concept of how to teach it yet.
Yeah. And I think that is such a key point. And I don't know, this was on this rant. You can go back in the podcast if you're new to the podcast and listen to these. But for a long time, especially when we're talking about technology and technology integration, I come back to this idea of highly structured, loosely organized, right? We need to create learning systems that are highly structured, loosely organized. Now, usually when I go into a classroom, I see the opposite. I see a teacher who has everything organized, but there's very little structure to the way that the learning is happening. But if you can flip that and you can have something like a raft prompt, right? You have a structure. The organization is where the learning has happened because you're not telling the kids what to type, but you have given them the structure. Their job is to organize their thinking, organize their thoughts, critically think through what their word choice is. That's where the learning's happening. But if you don't have the structure, then there's this idea of like self-paced learning or this idea of individualized learning, right? Or personalized learning works. You can do it. The problem is the more personalized you want the learning, the higher the structure has to be. And I think we miss that fact a lot, especially when it comes whenever we're introducing technology. We introduce technology and we instantly go to, well, kids, just go write your paper. Oh, just go prompt AI without giving the structure. And then kids are off task. They don't know what to do. And they're off task because they're trying to learn something they don't know. They're learning a new skill of whatever it is that we just assume that they know. But as soon as you put a structure in place, you all of a sudden get these aha moments of, oh, I can follow that structure. All humans want structure. That is why when you buy a piece of IKEA furniture, it comes with instructions. You think IKEA furniture is difficult now? Try doing it with no instructions, right? Those are the instructions. And we too often, I think, get away from the structure of the learning. You don't need to have the answers, but you need to have your raft, right? Your raft in place. You need to have your protocols in place. You need to have ways of having kids critically think in place. If you have the structure in place, that's when you get really good learning. But I find just too often that we the structure of these things. And as a teacher, right, you're creating the structure. You need kids to write. You want kids to write. And the raft is the same structure that your middle school teacher used when we were writing without AI. We change the ideas. We apply that structure to a new way, and you still have kids writing. I think that's the thing is now instead of just a lot of times teachers are saying, well, writing prompts isn't the same as writing something else. I'm like, well, it's not the same. You're right. It's probably a new genre. We haven't called it a new genre yet, but I think we're going to get there pretty soon. But there is a structure to that writing that needs to be taught. There's a structure, and kids are still writing. Like a good prompt is 2 or 3 paragraphs.
Yeah. And saying, oh, you're a young digital native, you know how to do that. In your analogy is like throwing the furniture at somebody and saying, you don't need instructions because you're from Sweden, so you must know how to put
Yeah,
it
you
together.
must know how to do this already. Yeah.
That assumption is not helpful. And to me, a prompt is like a recipe. If you can follow a structure, you can cook anything. You can try different flavors and ingredients and combinations of things. But if you don't know how to write a recipe, you're not going to have a repeatable output, something that you can replicate or duplicate. And that's what those frameworks give students. And what I tell teachers is you don't have to know the answer, just be willing to figure it out alongside your students.
Yeah. Love that. Let's talk about assessments or assignments and assessments for a second. Because I love this. I love what you are doing. And I think this is when I heard that you were already doing everything that I'm trying to tell teachers to do, I was like, yeah, see, I'm not crazy. Teachers are doing this and it's working. So one of the things in the podcast, if you've been listening for episodes, you know, I'm big on one of the first things we need to do in our classrooms is come up with some kind of AI. I call it an AI matrix. That's my words for it. You can call it whatever you want. Basically, it's stages of AI use. You know, on this assignment, you can use AI at this level. On this assignment, you can use AI at that level. Can you, for the listeners, talk through what that looks like in your classroom? And what are some of the things that what are those structures that you've put in place around assignments and assessments for kids?
Yeah, the biggest change I made in 2024 when the school year started was explicitly labeling every assignment with an AI integration level. And basically, it would be like telling kids in the past, you can use the library versus Google versus do it from memory. We've already done this before, just
Sure.
not within AI. And including no AI, by the way, that's an integration level. You can say, we're going to paper pencil this essay, and you're not going
Yeah.
to be on a device with the internet.
And I know it's really difficult and your arm is going to hurt, and mine did too.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically putting that on top of every assignment. And so there's different ways. You and I have a common language around the state of Washington. Wyoming's is one fewer box in the matrix, which I like the simplicity. But the idea is, how are you using the AI tool? And I equate it to if you had a human help you. So, for example, if you went to a history teacher and said, could you give me ideas on how I could write an outline for this? Nobody would consider that cheating. There should be an AI integration level where you can brainstorm or ideate with AI and then go write your own essay, fill in the blanks from that structure. That would be the first level we start at. And I just students, because their knowledge of what the tools can do comes from not knowing anything, what their teachers told them not to do, or TikTok.
Yeah.
That's all they know. And the
Right.
stuff on TikTok and
Yeah.
Instagram is usually how to beat AI detection software, how to use it as a replacement for your own thinking, how to cheat, essentially. And they'll say all the time, oh, I didn't know I could have AI write an outline based on 5 paragraphs with these 3 sources as my evidence, and then I fill it in. And I go, yeah, so for the student who struggles staring at a blank page and doesn't know where to start, let's just start with an outline, and now you can fill it in. And we work up through writing or working with AI. And that example I use as a human tutor, where you might say, here's what I want to say. How do I say that on an 11th grade level in history class from my words to, academic language? And the tutor might give them ideas. And now you're writing with AI. The high level is the AI is doing things I couldn't do on my own, or things not possible before. An example of that, we're actually doing this in class tomorrow. My students are reading about British textile factory workers, specifically children, and the conditions in those factories. Well, what my class did in the fall that was advanced and really into AI, they said, let's go take 5 primary source accounts from kids who worked in these factories, put them in a folder, and then we're going to interact with the sources through a large language model instead of reading each one by myself and coming up with like corroborate source A to B. We'll just use ChatGPT or Perplexity to do it. But they had a sense of humor and said, but we wanted to talk with a really over the top, archaic British accent.
Of course they do.
So it says blimey and all these other funny terms. And then we could go interrogate sources through this British archaic large language model that we created and say, hey, my teacher said that kids got beaten with sticks if they didn't meet their quotas. Is there anything in these 5 sources that would corroborate that claim? And it's going, yes, in my database, source B says this quote, source C says this quote. So that sounds like a very supported claim according to the evidence. And kids are like, oh, I didn't know you could just talk to sources. I thought you'd have to read them one at a time and build a graphic organizer. And so I just scaffold it up, because what the state of Wyoming says is students should be learning how to use AI in increasingly complex ways. So they go from a prompting framework, which is the very basics. That's like writing a sentence in first grade, to ACT, you're writing persuasive essays. So how do we get to those complex use cases, and how do I support kids on their way to get there?
Are you using, in your classroom, are you only using one tool? Are you starting to having kids say, oh, look, here's a cool tool called, Notebook LM, and it can do these things for you. But if you want to do this type of thing, this is what ChatGPT is good at. I mean, especially at the high school level, I mean, you're very in with this with your kiddos. Are you starting to have some of those conversations with high school kids?
Yes. My favorite is when they ask, what do you use?
Yeah.
Like, you showed us this stuff. Do you use this schoolified, safe, guardrailed AI thing? Because we all know you use it at home.
Yeah.
One of my quotes we jokingly wrote on the board, because I'm a government history teacher, was, do not abdicate your technological sovereignty to the school district tech guy.
I love it.
Translation, if you're not a history tech nerd like me, don't just say, oh, they blocked it, I can't use it, because kids go, good luck blocking this, Mr. Tech guy. I can go home and put Perplexity, ChatGPT, DeepSeek, whatever I want on my phone.
Yeah.
And so there are limitations with what kids can get on their device. And what I've tried to lobby for is, it's an equity issue. If the kid with the $1,000 phone and the $40 a month data plan can afford it and learn it and access it, but the kid who just has the school issued Chromebook and no internet at home can't, we have to teach to that level.
Yeah.
And yeah, I learned, I invested very heavily in one that I won't name, and it's a great product. I had spaces in it and content, and kids were interviewing characters from novels. And I come back from the spring of 2024, fall of 24. I think all my content's in there. The first day with kids, I have them access it, and they're like, hey, this link is blocked. And my district blocked it over the summer. Probably some automated thing with the filtering software.
Yeah.
And so I try to be tool agnostic. So take your prompting framework example. Another reason to have structure is it can transfer across platforms.
Yeah.
Whereas you're like, oh, I only know the interface and the cookie version that this AI app already made me, so I didn't have to prompt it very well. Then you're dependent on the tool and you're kind of stuck behind a moat.
Yeah. I was thinking about, it's so funny you brought that up. I was thinking about this morning, and I was just thinking, like, I'm the same way. I get frustrated with the education specific AIs that I feel down more. I mean, I know we're trying to protect kids 100%, but in doing that, we a lot of times end up dumbing down the platform that, to your point, kids are just going to go home and use on their phone or whatever. And the morning it hit me. I was just like, oh my gosh, we did this already. It was called searching. And I remember this because I was a fourth grade teacher when Google came out, when the internet came out. I remember being a fourth grade teacher. And so Google was way too complicated for kids. And so we created things like Yahooligans search and Ask Jeeves search. And we had this kid safe search and that kid safe search. And we went all in on all these kid safe searching things. And 5, 6 years later, we all just ended up using Google anyway. And today, none of those things exist. And all we do is we either we teach kids to search using the library database, which is a safe place to get kids to learn how to search. Or the next step is you're out on Google because that's what everybody uses, including kids before they even come to our schools, know Google and know that exists. And so I think sometimes education gets in its own way around this idea of, oh, we need to make something that is, educationally, when I'm, to your point, I'm just like, you don't let the powers that be stand in your way of all these incredible tools. I mean, even when I'm working with districts, there's like, well, we only use Google tools or we only use Microsoft tools. And I was like, why would you do that to yourself? You pay for an internet access that gives you everything. And yet you've decided that you're only going to use this one specific, pathway because you've decided that we can't handle the entire thing. And I just find it so fascinating.
The analogy that comes to mind with your search example is we're putting elbow pads, knee pads, a helmet, and training wheels on the bike and getting really good at riding with those on. And then the day they graduate or leave or get a job, all that comes off. Like, I've never actually ridden a bike before without the elbow pads, knee pads, helmet, and training wheels, and I'm going to fall on my face.
Yeah. And I find it so interesting too. And I'm glad I figured you were, using different tools, because this is what I'm finding with the university students that I get to interact with and I stalk on places like Reddit. Is that they're very much finding, these what for them in specific ways, and what that looks like. And right now, from everything that I'm reading and hearing, and even the kids that I know that are in university right now, Google's Notebook LM is blowing up big time at universities, with the way that you can upload research, the way that it creates the little podcast, it creates a study guide, it creates a topic menu. I mean, they're finding it very, very useful. And so it has me thinking, okay, well then if college are finding this useful as a study tool, how are we supporting those that will be in college in 2 or 3 years to understand that this is a tool that you can leverage in these ways that actual students are finding successful when they are out there on their own, right? And of course, Notebook LM does things differently than ChatGPT does, than Perplexity does. They all do something a little bit different. And I think exposing kids to that, especially in high school, I think exposing kids to that and do a little comparing and contrasting to pick the right tool for the job is a skill that they're going to need. It's just as important to me as like, are you writing an informational text or are you writing an expository text? Like, it's the same type of idea. Where do you think we go from here? You've got, I don't know, it's February. You've got 5-6 months left in the school year. What's on the horizon for you, your kids, or any of the ideas around using AI?
Yeah. So we're on an intensive block, kind of like a college schedule. My students were new in my classroom in January. So we're just getting into routines and we're a quarter of the way through the semester. And the highest AI integration level on our scale, which is AI empowered, this is the first week that we're doing that. That's where what's really cool about working with kids is when you teach them the structure and the framework, they'll go do things you never would have thought of. And then, you make a TikTok video or a LinkedIn video and it gets all these views and people think you're smart. And you're like, oh, I just showed what my kid did with a tool that I did. I think the wall that a lot of institutions have tried to prop up and keep AI out is definitely crumbling. People are tunneling under it. The wind is blowing hard. It's raining. Yeah. It's just the cracks are showing that it's not possible, just like we tried to do with the internet and Google as a history teacher. When I first started teaching, it was textbooks, memorization, and people said things like, Google will ruin our memory and you still have to memorize things. Yeah. What would we teach if kids didn't have names, dates, and facts on a history quiz? And I think the answers often lie in looking back through history and say, well, were those critics right? Are there ways to teach when we shifted that paradigm? Which the obvious answer is yes. You just couldn't see those at the time. And someone has to go in the history classroom and be like, hey, kids, you can Google things even on the quiz.
Yeah.
And people thought I was crazy. I still have students who are like, your syllabus says I can use Google on the quiz and AI if it's allowed. How can you give a quiz with AI? And I was like, well, what if I give you an AI output and you have to evaluate mine and give me feedback on my prompts? And they're like, that can be a quiz, not just names and dates. I say, yeah, I control the gradebook. I can assess you in any way that I want, as long as it
Yeah.
shows you're learning.
Yeah.
So I think the novel formats, like we're just starting to even conceptualize what those would be. The other one that's really interesting to me are wearables and devices. And this might be a little nerdy, but I had a student come back from Christmas break and he had a pair of Meta glasses, and
Oh
I
boy,
didn't
you've got your
know.
pair. Last time we talked, I think you were just ordered them.
Yeah, well, once TikTok went really crazy, he was doing a science packet and he was talking to himself. And the first thing we do is we look and go, is he talking to his phone? No.
Yeah.
Does he have an earbud in? No. And I'm like, who is he talking to about swirl thumbprints in forensic science? Like, is this kid losing his mind? And I walked up to him and all these kids around him were giggling. And I said, it's your glasses, isn't it? And he just smiles really big. And I said, okay, I'm going to make you a deal. I don't know how that works, but you're going to teach me and let me try them. And then I won't write you up for cheating on your science packet. And he just hands me his glasses and teaches me. And the first use I had, I went to a world map on this teacher's wall that was out of date. And I looked at Africa and I prompted it and I said, hey, Meta, here's a map of Africa. Tell me what's historically inaccurate according to 2025 borders.
Wow.
And it's like, well, based on this map, it doesn't show South Sudan, which has been a country now for 10 or 15 years. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't even have to take a picture.
Wow.
I didn't have to upload stuff.
Wow.
And I walked out of school that day and I took a selfie video and said, we don't even know how to deal with cell phones yet. Now we have kids with AI in their glasses. What are we going to do? Which everybody on TikTok has opinions. And they put them in the comment section. But, I didn't tell that kid, you can't use AI. It was just a different format than what we were used to.
Sure.
So I am how, the watches, the glasses, the pendants, the voice recorder things. If I'm a college student that has a little device on the back of my phone that records lectures,
yeah,
why would we not let kids capture what you're already teaching in the lecture hall?
Yeah.
One, you should be, but if you're not, let the kid do it and throw those transcribed notes into Notebook LM or their tool of choice. And there's just all these things. What I go back to is the people who made this stuff have no idea how we're going to use it. They just say, here's what it can do.
Yeah.
Go figure out how it helps you.
Yeah. Go find a good way to use it.
And, the people who manufacture cars know exactly how we'll use them. You're going to drive from point A to point B, and that's all you can do with it. Yeah. And with AI tools, did the meta people think history teachers could translate propaganda from different languages or out-to-date issues with maps by just looking at it? Probably not. They thought it would be for Instagram videos or something.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think, one of the things that my goddaughter who's at university and back to Notebook LM, she has always, as I think most university students do now, is record all of the lectures. So she's got all these, and she would back and listen to them if she needed to. But now she records the lectures, uploads them into Notebook LM with all of her notes and with all, the text and all the handouts and everything. And then when she needs to ask a question for a study guide, it will pull from that audio file of, here's what the teacher said in class on Thursday. I mean, how incredible is that? It's just this idea that we have all these multi-module formats now that you can bring together and do crazy things with, I think is unbelievable. And the Meta glasses, to your point, I mean, it's just a new way of doing a lot of the things, like to be able to look at a map and say, what's out of date with this map or what's going on with this? I need a pair of glasses that as soon as somebody's walking up to me, they're like, oh, this is Aaron. You met him 3 weeks ago. Oh, thank you. And that's what I'm waiting for. I need the face. I know nobody wants face recognition, but I need it.
Yeah. And the studying one, I get messages all the time from former students. I just got one this last week. I haven't opened a textbook. I'm in
Yeah.
my second semester of college and I have straight A's. How is this possible? I put all my notes and all my brainstorming and studying into ChatGPT.
Yep.
And they're like, I don't cheat. I use it at
Yeah.
home. I didn't sneak into the test and have it write my essays.
Yeah.
I
But
had a
all my
student,
studying is different. Yeah.
yeah, advanced anatomy class. They got a list of body parts, regions, systems, whatever it was. And the teacher said, okay, you have the rest of class to study. This student had been in my class the semester before. She took a picture of his study guide, put it into Perplexity, and said, write me multiple choice, 3 incorrect, 1 correct for a high school anatomy course. It spit all those out. She put it in Quizlet, and she's quizzing herself within a minute or two.
Wow.
And she said the kids at my table were writing their first index card on the front, question, answer on the back.
And
And they
she's
look over
already
there and they're like,
quizzing herself.
what are you doing? How are you answering questions? Like, where'd you write those? She's like, I didn't write them. I scanned them into Perplexity and then output it into Quizlet. And they're like, what's Perplexity? She came and showed me and I
With
was
life
like,
alone.
see, and how is that cheating? It's not
Yeah.
cheating. It's
Yeah.
using resources in novel ways that everybody should have access to. But if people don't know that exists, they're going to sit there and make index cards for 45 minutes.
Yeah. And if the only way you know how to use AI is to cheat, that's the only way you're going to use it. Versus she having structure and understanding, oh, look, this is a really cool way I could use AI for learning purpose, not for cheating, for a learning purpose, because she was taught that there's other ways to use it than just quote unquote write your essay for you. Right. And I think we miss that so often with a lot of technology,
Yes. And I use this analogy with school. Don't forget the people calling it cheating wrote the rules of what cheating is.
Mm.
And sometimes school can exist in a snow globe that's very disconnected from the outside world, because I ask my students this question all the time. What job are you going to have that your boss or your colleague is not going to tell you to look it up? Google it,
Yeah.
YouTube it, ChatGPT it. They're going to say, I don't know, figure it out.
Yeah.
But
They don't care.
in school, we say that's cheating. What's the
Yeah.
difference? Well, I
Yeah.
defined plagiarism or cheating as however I did in my handbook because I wrote the rules. And
That's right.
oftentimes the teacher who calls it cheating also doesn't know a different way. Oh, I didn't know AI could proofread your writing for spelling mistakes, grammar issues,
Yeah.
and 11th grade vocabulary. Why wouldn't I want my kids doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for spending some time with us today. You are all over the social medias. Want to give a plug to where people can follow you, see your amazing TikToks and everything else that you're doing?
Yeah, TikTok's back in the App Store the weekend before we recorded.
Yeah, I know, right?
I got
For the moment.
questions.
So as we're recording this, TikTok is back.
Yeah, I was that guy. I had people checking in on me like I had a family member die or something the weekend that TikTok got shut off for a few hours. What are you going to do with all your time? Are you doing okay? Are you crying on TikTok Live as it's getting unplugged?
Do you
Everything's.
find a lot of teachers there? Like, who's commenting and viewing your stuff? Is it teachers? Is it kids? Is it kind of everybody? Or is it?
I love that you asked that. So, the most recent video that's gotten a lot of traction, a teacher, so I'm in my 30s,
Yeah.
talking about Gen Z students with technology. I love analytics. What do you think the highest demographic of my viewership was on a video that got 4 million views in a day and 8 million views in like 3 days? What age group do you think was the vast majority on TikTok?
I'm going to say 25 to 30.
55 plus.
No way.
Yep. And here's why. I talk to my kids, they go, we've
What?
known about meta glasses. That didn't blow our mind. Those have been out for a year. The people
Oh.
engaging it going, oh, this is crazy. What's the world coming to? Teachers are irrelevant. We're boomers that didn't know this stuff.
Oh, wow.
The smallest viewership by age was 18 to 24.
Wowzers.
Because
See,
kids,
that's
they all
so
shrugged
funny.
like, yeah, whatever. We just want to see Drake
Yeah, we just
memes.
flipped past it.
Yeah,
We
it
know
was
meta
not
glasses.
interesting because they've known about it for a year. It was 55 plus was the biggest age demographic.
Wow.
So
I didn't even know there's that many people 55 plus on TikTok.
Yeah, it's the fastest growing demographic. They're not the biggest, but they're the fastest growing. And
Fastest growing.
I think what's changed with that is kids use those tools as visual search engines.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, TikTok is the number one search engine for that for our students today.
Yep. So when I do Gen Z slang, it's parents, teachers, grandparents going, my kid keeps saying this phrase, what's it mean? And they knew TikTok would have a video. So it's different than you'd think. I actually don't get it of the younger people because I don't do dances and some of the stuff that they're
Yeah.
probably opening TikTok for. Mine is trending pretty older, actually. And yeah, it's all under my name, Aaron McKelkey. We can put a link to my little page that has all my socials.
Yeah, we'll make sure there's a link to everything. I mean, my TikTok is nothing but home improvement videos because that's usually what I'm stopping and looking at. I'm like, oh wow, that's a great way to lay LVP flooring. I never thought about doing it that way, or I never thought about using that tool like that. I'll have to remember that.
Yeah.
So then of course I just keep getting more home improvement stuff.
That's why kids love it, because they have their own flavor based on, the algorithm and what they've liked and engaged with. It builds it exactly what you want to see.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, thanks so much. We'll make sure there are links to your TikTok and your Instagram and your LinkedIn. If you're not following at LinkedIn, that's another great place. Always sharing good things over there as well. That's where I'm hanging out most of my time these days, is over at LinkedIn. So, well, thank you for taking time all the way from Casper, Wyoming to talk to us about your classroom, the way that you're leveraging AI. And I love it. We're actually looking at, okay, how do we take that up? It's one thing for me as a teacher to use it to create lesson plans and help me give feedback, and fantastic, not a problem with that. But we need to start pushing, right? It's 2025. We need to start pushing this into the hands of kids and thinking about how do we restructure some of the things we do, and how do we put those structures in place that allow kids to use this in really meaningful, impactful ways. I think we've got to start moving that way if we haven't already. So hopefully this gave you some ideas. Again, I know Aaron is more than welcome to answer any questions as well. Please do reach out to us here at Shifting Schools, or you'll hit up Aaron if you want to learn more about his classroom and some of the things. He shares a ton, again, over on TikTok, Instagram, and LinkedIn, as well as everywhere else. And you can find that link in our show notes. Aaron, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Really appreciate you giving us your thoughts and opinions and talking about your classroom.
I'm honored, Jeff. Thank you for having me on and letting me be a part of the Shifting Schools podcast. I've learned a ton from you and our work together so far.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy.
Hey there, dedicated listener. If you've made it this far, we know you're passionate about shifting the way education works. And Tricia and I appreciate you. If you loved what you heard today, we'd be so grateful if you could take a moment to rate and review Shifting Schools wherever you listen to podcasts. Those ratings help us reach even more educators just like you. And if you know someone who could benefit from these conversations, please share this episode with them. Just one person. Think of the impact we can make together. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter for even more great content. And if you haven't already, join us at Camp Shifting Schools, where the conversations keep going long after the podcasts end. Thank you for being a part of this journey, and thank you for being part of Shifting Schools.